Well, welcome. Well, Freedom Day has come and gone, and what a glorious day it seems to have been. How lucky everybody has been escaping from the shackles of those lefty tossers that just go against everything that's good for Britain, according to many right-wing numpties, of course. But Freedom Day didn't come soon enough for GB News and others of similar persuasion. So when Boris threw a curveball on that same Freedom Day, rather than just fanning the flames of stupidity, it was more like throwing a can of petrol on a fire and just adding some kerosene just for good measure. Well, the SH1T certainly hit the fan, and with some degree of justification. So let's not be too hasty in our judgment. But before you think that I've lost the plot, let me explain. As you know, Boris has said that from September, it's going to be mandatory for those attending nightclubs to be fully vaccinated. Well, one could be forgiven that, given the reaction of the far-right commentators such as Belfield or Farage, the British people had been asked to give up Sunday lunches. I mean, cries of oppression, of freedom, and for ordinary folks up and down the length and breadth of Britain just bellowed out through every orifice of every similar style commentator for the last 48 hours. Now, and leading that charge, well, that was none other than our main man, Mr. Nigel Farage. Now, obviously, we've become accustomed to this bloke's style of commentary in that though he's quick to point out the flaws in the actions of others, he seldom either offers a realistic or alternative, but instead tells the lemmings what it is they want to hear. Now, a prime example of this was his commentary on just two items. One being the wearing of face masks, and two being the pinging of to self-isolate from the new track and trace app. But apart from that, Nigel says, and I quote here, "It doesn't feel like freedom to me," and then went on to regale his followers with the greatest load of crap I have yet heard from this imbecile. You see, despite saying that the country had been almost in terminal lockdown, he tells us this.
You know what, I was at Wembley for the final, and there must have been about 250,000 people out there, so not too much has changed there. We've had big crowds at golf, big crowds at Silverstone too. So it isn't that much of a Freedom Day.
So basically he's saying that there hadn't really been any restrictions anyway. And the only thing required of people was to have the courtesy to wear a mask to reduce the chances of killing somebody else. I mean, that's what face masks are for. A simple gesture to remind yourself and those around you of the dangers we still all face. But I thought a little bit more about it and what Boris actually said, and for the first time, he may actually have done something for the benefit of the country. He may. Now, of course, okay, you know, with everything else that this clown has said and done so far, one would not want to think that he will not change his mind. But for now, let's give him the benefit of the doubt.
Life's most important pleasures and opportunities are likely to be increasingly dependent on vaccination. I should serve notice now that by the end of September, when all over 18s will have had their chance to be double jabbed, we're planning to make full vaccination the condition of entry to nightclubs and other venues where large crowds gather.
So he's called for a vaccine passport to enter nightclubs, and no doubt this is going to happen across other sectors also. But why? Why is it going to happen across other sectors? The answer to that is very simple. If the UK does not adopt such a protocol as the rest of Europe does, as can already be seen, UK citizens will not be allowed to enter into Europe. End of story. They won't be allowed in. No, but I do have a query. If Boris recognises that A, nightclubs are a serious sort of infection clusters, B, something needs to be done, and C, he needs an incentive for younger generations to get vaccinated, Why in the hell are they allowed to open now, given that very, very few of those under the age of 25 have been fully vaccinated? It makes no sense. But let's move on to what was at the core of Freedom Day: stupidity. Okay? I'm going to make some very bold statements here that, should the Farage supporters get their hands on, they will truly freak out. Not because what I'm reporting is untrue, but because they might actually question this charlatan's real intentions.
Look, I think we've got to get on with the rest of our lives now. And if you're vulnerable, shield.
And there you have it. If you're vulnerable, shield. Now, that was just in October and November of last year. Now, how those in care homes, how those the sick, the elderly were going to shield is, of course, anyone's guess. But it certainly wasn't up for Nigel to provide a solution to that. But why would he take such a stance? Is it because he favours the US system?
Let's throw in the mix here that here in this country, with those sort of politics, we do have a very successful NHS who are out to look after us. If you are in America, there are a great many American citizens who are utterly alone when they come down with COVID-19. Many Americans don't have that health system that we've got here and will die alone in their home.
Well, and that's the electoral choice that people have got to make here in this country.
And there you have it again. Yet again, his cavalier attitude is simply sickening. It's rotten to the core. But how in the hell does he get away with it? That, I'm afraid, is easier to explain. He tells people what they want to hear. He always tells people what they want to hear, and he always tells those same people when things go askew or they screw up that it's somebody else's fault. In the next clip, you're going to hear how, when our buddy Nigel turned up with his 10 mates, along of course with his own security, 3 hours before the final kickoff. We're going to hear about this. Now remember, this means he arrived about 5 p.m. and as he was entering the stadium, not leaving, he witnessed this. So obviously very distressful scenes there, and perhaps in many ways, for many of us, reminiscent of Hillsborough. But whose fault was it, according to Nigel? Who should be held accountable for the behaviour of these Muppets? Well, honestly, there are Olympic ice skating champions that are simply no match for the speed of Nigel's spin on this one.
And of course, the idiots that organised the game chose a time on a Sunday evening of 8 o'clock. What do you think very large numbers of unticketed young men were going to do all day until 8 o'clock? They were going to drink, weren't they? I mean, we can talk about changes of culture. The fact is, young English blokes have been doing this for centuries all over the world, and that was the first big mistake. The first big mistake was an 8 p.m. kickoff, which guaranteed problems.
There you go again. His mantra, his signature play. It's not your fault, it's theirs. Those guys over there. It's never your fault. You know what? I don't think Beckham could bend a ball better than this joker can spin a story. So I'll see you next time.